Okay, tonight's going to be air seal night, FPS consistency, and a little bit of the feeding with the magazine from the mag well to the hop-up chamber. So I'm going to cover a lot of stuff, and anything that you don't understand, please leave some comments. The questions can go in the comments below. But let's go ahead and get right to it. Basically, I'll start from the inside of the gearbox and work my way outside. So on the inside of the gearbox, you want to have as good of a air seal as possible. The inside is going to be the piston's O-ring, the piston head, the cylinder head, and the air nozzle. Now the way you do this test is you usually put it inside the gearbox. You can do it outside the gearbox if you hold the tap-up plate, put your hand over the air nozzle, and push the piston forward. Now I get instant compression. The reason you want your tap-up plate forward is you're checking the O-ring on the air nozzle. You want to make sure that it feeds very well through and that you lube all these parts. Now when you put this in the gearbox, if you did change the O-ring to the air nozzle because you wanted a better seal, when you change this, you also have to modify usually the spring to the tap-up plate. Now mine's for a DSG, so because of timing issues, you have to have a much smaller spring. There's a lot less coils here. This is what gives me full return time. I've done quite a bit of testing per coil, and then eventually just started doing 2 coils. I was just like, I gotta cut more coils. And then the return time was, good. So when we get that in there, we know now that that's good to go. You want to make sure there's no real friction here, and you apply lube, and then these parts will last a long time. If you have no air seal here, you can use gasket maker. You can Teflon tape it. It doesn't matter. It's not going to really blow out if you put it between the O-rings and it's stuck in here in the gearbox. So if you have a bad air seal on the piston head, just get another number 14. If it doesn't go very good with this combination of parts, you can switch them out. If there's way too much friction inside the cylinder, you can, oh gosh, I can't even think here, polish it. However, if you just buy the parts that really match, you get very good air seal usually overall. So these parts will last a long time without really much opening the gearbox and remodifying. Okay, so basically that's all said right there. The next thing to make sure is that if you short stroke, you only short stroke from the release side, or excuse me, the pickup side. Excuse me, my finger's in the right spot. The pickup side. If you short stroke from over here, it's again return time based on your tap-up spring. Now this is DSG, so all that, no worries right now, no short stroking. And I've already done the tap-up spring and I've already explained that, so let's move on. What you're going to want to do is check how far your tap-up plate can go forward. Okay, mine used to go, or it used to measure 2.42, roughly about that. Now what it measures is about 216. Okay, so more than 0.2 millimeter of extra space left to leave this tap-up plate forward. Now you may ask, what am I doing on this? There's actually, what I'm doing is applying a force forward to the bucking, and at the same time I do the same thing over here. I use the hop-up chamber to apply a force to the air nozzle, or the gear. Exactly, it's really the gearbox. The air nozzle is going to mainly be based on the tap-up plate modification. So I saved 0.2 here. I also saved 0.2 here. What I did was I shaved the back of these fins, so the 0.2 is also, there's also a 0.2 difference here. So when this goes into the body and locks in place, it actually falls back more this way to the gearbox by 0.2 millimeters. So in case there's some kind of airspace that you can't see, it's almost virtually impossible to see, you'll know that there's extra force applied and that you're getting a better air seal because everything's being pushed together. So you're pushing this against the gearbox shell, make sure it's flush. You're also forcing the air nozzle to be flush with the bucking. Now, with the bucking, you need to make sure that the air nozzle can reach into it and there's nothing blocking, and it hits the bucking. Excuse me, we're just going to take this off. And it hits the bucking. When it hits the bucking, there should be a little bit of backwards pressure. You can see here as I tap into it, it springs backwards. The reason is because it's hitting the bucking lips. You can also tell by putting your air nozzle over it how well it would seal to the bucking if it got in the right spot. So this would be very well. This is Systema air nozzle, excuse me, Systema bucking, and Prometheus air nozzle, or excuse me, this is, geez, tonight's not my night on thinking these things. Garter air nozzle. So I'm going to put this on here, and you can check the air seal just by blowing through your barrel. When you do this, if you spit into your barrel, you're going to have to clean it out. But you can see here, I put it against it. Should be near impossible to do any blowing. The other seal is between the bucking and the hop-up chamber and the barrel. And you can do a floss mod, however I don't suggest that unless it's the proper spacing inside the hop-up chamber. Sometimes the spacing is really freaking tight, so you're going to want to use something like a gasket maker. The reason is because it's more like a liquid. It makes it easy to put it in. It settles. However, with that, it's going to be a little bit of more of a pain to get off the barrel and get out of the bucking. You're probably going to destroy the bucking and not be able to use it again. However, if you want a perfect seal, this is the way to go. If you know what you're doing, you don't have to worry about taking it back out. My main problem is between the nub here and the bucking, because this chamber, well, there's more to that, but this isn't going to do anything. It's basically with hop. Okay, I'm not going to explain that tonight. So I have 100% air seal, and that's because I made sure that the bucking had some gasket sealant on it, and when I put it in, there's no air escaping. Now, sometimes the blow test can be a little bit hard to tell if there's air escaping. Sometimes I guess a person may not be able to tell, but they should be able to. I got 3 minutes on my video. I'm going to save for a moment. And return. Okay, so what I was trying to say is that you'll want to make sure your seal is definitely good, especially if you can't tell through a blow test. I've done it quite a bit that I can tell. But some buckings and some hop-up chambers and some barrels make the fitment perfect without even applying some type of sealant or anything. It just depends between parts and the brands and so forth. Sometimes if you just stick with the entire brand, you won't have to apply any type of sealant or any type of floss mod, anything to keep the air seal really good. So basically, those are just things you can do to make that better. Okay, so there's a force implied from the hop-up chamber being forced to the gearbox and the air nozzle being forced to the bucking. When you do installing, I just remembered something. When you do installing, if it is too tight, sometimes the air nozzle's bucking does not go all the way forward. It may look like it, but sometimes you are not going to notice it, I guess. Maybe a person couldn't. I've noticed it through testing and just looking at it. If it's really tight, sometimes it's difficult rotating the barrel in and getting it in there. But what you want to make sure is that not only do you get a perfect air seal, but the lips of the bucking are all the way to the back here. or I guess that would be all the way forward to the air nozzle, mainly because your air nozzle only goes so far forward, and if your bucking is not in the right position, air leak. You can have inconsistency and it's not going to shoot all that great sometimes. So good thing I explained that. Let's see here. Now I'm going to show kind of how to test these things and get everything good to go. So you've got your assembly here. Where's my air nozzle? And make sure I test it. Okay, so you put it in here. This is basically what I would do, and then I'll explain at the same time. So got that all the way forward. You're going to want to leave it all the way forward for the first test. So you're going to take your spring here and basically install. You don't need the completely close up the gearbox with all the parts. You just need to do a test with certain parts. So okay, so basically you've got this all the way forward. You're going to want to close this gearbox shell. And you're going to want to, you don't have to do all the screws, just enough to keep it closed for your testing. Where is my screwdriver? Okay, so we've got that. Let's tighten down just this one. I really only need one screw. Okay, so you've got the gearbox, and the first things you're going to test is the fitment. You're going to take your hop-up chamber and your gearbox shell while the air nozzle is all the way forward, and you can see the spring on the air nozzle, on the tap plate, excuse me. And as soon as you press it in, you should feel some kind of resistance, something pushing the air nozzle or the gearbox back to your other arm. You can feel it coming back this way. Now you want to feel it basically bounce forward. That bouncing is the bucking lips. So as I put this on here, I don't know how well you can see that. See if I can, you can feel it as I put it on there. Now you're gonna, when you close up the gun, it's gonna be all the way pressed like this, and you can feel if that's a really good fit. It definitely is a really good fit from feel. I can tell you it's on there really good. So you're gonna have to make sure that the gearbox does this. So what you can do is put this in the gun. Now, depending on your gun, as soon as you put it in there, you may not be able to do a blow test, because let's say you want to do it on this barrel and you take off your flash hider here, but when you go to blow through, there's still air leaking through the outer barrel. So basically you're going to have to cover up your inner barrel, stabilize it, put it in, make it a tight fit, so when you do blow through, the air is trying to pass through just the barrel. Now, the reason I say that is because, let me grab this gun again. When you put these parts in here, the gearbox goes in here, the barrel assembly goes in there, the inner barrel, excuse me, assembly. Sometimes the other specs of the gun do not allow it to have those forces implied, that do not let them press together. So you want to make sure that you check the overall, basically. Once you got the gun all together, that's why you would blow through and see if there's a perfect air seal. That's why earlier also I had you check the cylinder kind of stuff. You want to do that kind of test, because the test when you go to blow is basically going to be between the barrel and the bucking to the air nozzle. In front should be the piston all the way to the front. Now, if I was to blow on this, I believe the piston will go backwards. So if you had the spring installed, that will not happen. The piston on this one does not have the spring installed. Okay. Alright, I explained quite a bit pretty quickly, and I think that will be very helpful. Other things I could explain, I guess, I was going to talk about the feeding. I have a video for making a delay clip for the sector. I also have a video for making the tap-up plate and how to check it and so forth in the cycle. But the next thing is going to be loading a BB into your chamber, because that's where sometimes the feeding can get stuck up. Basically what you want to do is hold your gearbox with the air nozzle all the way forward, or excuse me, all the way backwards. I forgot about this part. So what you want to do is take the gearbox back apart real quick. Actually, you don't need to. You just cycle the sector gear here. Because I have the anti-reversal latch in, I can cycle the sector gear until the air nozzle is all the way back. So that's what I'm going to do. Because I'm going to be able to do the first time. Okay, that's definitely all the way back because I can't press it in anymore. Okay. Alright, so now that you've got it all the way back, what you're going to do is get your barrel with your hop-up chamber. And you usually want to put this inside your gun because you want to test the overall fitment again. But what's going to happen is you have this installed and you're going to drop a BB through the mag well. So if I had this all installed, my gun's going to be like this. I'm going to drop a BB through and see if it easily goes in front of the air nozzle. Now I already know that that is going to happen because I tested this a long time ago, and plus my gun shoots 45 plus rounds per second. So but you drop it in through the top here, and you can see here there's plenty of room for this to happen. So no issue there. If there is an issue, let's say you cannot get the BB in, you can move the hop-up chamber a little bit more forward. However, from the overall test, you'd have to see if it seals with the bucking if you were to move this all the way forward. So you'd have to retest that. Now, in this case, I don't have to worry about that because everything is good to go. You will want to test with your mag and the mag well here to make sure that this button is hit. So when you put your mag in, the BBs do flow out easily. Okay, I think that is everything explained. There are a few other air mods that can be done. I mean, you can heat up the O-rings. People have talked about that. I don't go for that because over time they just seem to shrink regardless, depending on the lubrication and how much it is used, the friction and so forth. So overall, what I do is I get all the parts to work together and fit perfectly, and then you can use the gun for a very long time without having to open it, fix that compression issue again. So here's from my old video. This has been lubed and it stayed like this, and that was probably, I don't know how many days ago. So if I test the overall compression, it's the same. Okay, so this could be in a gun still shooting with the same compression over and over. That's just what you want. You want to have everything come together perfectly like this. And sometimes, even though you do everything great, the buckings don't seal very well to the air nozzle. Some air nozzles have a little bit more of an, I guess, a little bit more oval shape, more opening and some have a little bit more closed, and some will seal to the bucking even better than others. So tell me what you guys think. I'm going to do a shooting test with the Chrono to show you how much this has improved my build, so that you can learn from it for your builds. Let's see. Alright guys, if this was a good video, please give me a like. Tell me what you think. This is an M150 spring by Prometheus. On the I always say Riot, but it's Riot chart. This spring M150 is supposed to equal, I think, 88 meters per second. When you convert that to feet per second, that's supposed to be 288, I think, or 289. So I am actually over the limit on the chart, which shows that I have a really good compression. Overall, I have beat the chart simply because everything came together and all the modifications and so forth being shown. So, if you guys really like that, give me a big thumbs up, say Zacho is awesome, and I'll catch you guys later.